Okay, we're now going to explore the third perspective, constructivism, and I will start with presenting a definition, as I did in the previous perspectives, a definition of learning according to the perspective of constructivism, and then I will zoom into a particular application, a particular instructional model, you might say, the community of learners. Okay, first we look into the definition. Learning is, together with other learners, constructing knowledge which builds upon the learner's own experience. As you can see, this definition of learning is richer than the previous definitions. There are more, let's say, ingredients in the definition. So we are gradually expanding, let's say, our focus, our perspective on learning as we move from behaviorism through cognitivism now to constructivism. So constructivism can be considered as the third step in the development of our views on learning. First, we had the behaviorist perspective, where we simply, let's say, connected stimuli, external stimuli, with learning outcomes, without taking into account any of the mechanisms which might be hypothesized to take place within the black box, let's say. No black box in this model. So that's a rather simple model, but also a very effective perspective, as we saw. The second perspective is the cognitive perspective, in which we have several, let's say, steps moving from instruction to learning outcomes. We assume that there are learning processes, we assume that there are internal learning outcomes, and we also take into consideration learning characteristics. So this is a more, let's say, advanced model, let's say, of learning. And the third model we are now moving to is the constructivist perspective, which is even more complicated, as you can see from this figure. Here we have the idea that the learner has knowledge at her or his disposition, generalized schemata, situations, specific schemata, mental models, and this knowledge directs the process of acquiring knowledge through perception, through exploration, through studying, or through conducting research studies. And this process of acquiring knowledge leads to a sampling, the environment, the green area in this figure. And this sampling leads to examples, to events, observations, experiments. And these data, in fact, modify the available knowledge. So there is a gradual sort of, cycle of enriching available knowledge and subsequently acquiring new knowledge, doing experiments, and then again modifying and expanding the existing knowledge. So here you can say that the learner basically is in charge. It's not the environment, not the teacher or the stimulus or whatever, but it is the learner who actually governs and steers and conducts the whole process of learning, as you can see. Okay, so that's the next step. The learner is really in charge, and as we can see also, there is the environment, there are the other learners who also play a role. Therefore, the view of constructivism is also called the socio-constructivism view, indicating that learning is a social process. We are going to explore that further in this particular example of an instructional model, an arrangement which is based on the views of constructivism, the community of learners. The idea of the community of learners has been developed by Anne Brown and her husband Joseph Campione in the 90s, basically, of the previous century, in the area of Los Angeles, Berkeley, in primary schools. So the whole idea is an idea which originated from doing research in primary education. And Brown has made various publications, of course, on this particular subject, and together you can more or less extract a couple of principles behind the instructional model of the community of learners. I just list them here, and we are going to explore them further subsequently. The first is that students participate in the process of knowledge development. So basically, learning is about knowledge development, and students play an active role in that process, as I already, let's say, discussed when discussing the definition of learning according to the constructivist view. Second is that inquiry-based education is basically the whole process which is going on. There's a focus on big ideas. Students become acquainted with the culture of research and collaboration. And students develop critical thinking skills, critical judgment skills, reflection skills, and resources are available, to help students to do their research. Now, okay, we will move into that in detail now. The first thing is that students participate in the process of knowledge development. And I'm going to show you an example which has been recorded at the Vrije Universiteit in Amsterdam, where we developed a course. The teachers developed a course and we helped them to do that in the bachelor program on biomedical sciences. So this is a particular, let's say, a practical for second year students, 5 groups of 8 students, in which they explore the cell biological, physiological and physical background of cancer by manipulating DNA in a so-called yeast model. That will be explained further in the video clip. Chris Vos and Marco Siderius are the 2 teachers, the researchers in this particular project, and there are other people as well involved. So students are doing this practical, and they are actually doing research, which also contributes to the research program of the teachers. But apart from that, they also write a summary of the practical, and they do a paper and pencil test. So together these form the tests, which are the end of this particular course. Okay, so we are going to have a look at the video clip now.
Is een onderzoeksproject waarbij we proberen de studenten een aantal basisvaardigheden bij te brengen en tegelijkertijd te laten zien hoe bouw je een onderzoek op.
Dus we proberen eigenlijk de actuele onderzoeksvragen die we hebben te vertalen en in het practicum in te brengen, zodat we eigenlijk samen met de studenten op pad gaan om een klein stukje onderzoek uit te voeren van onze afdeling.
Heel kortweg is het onderzoek dat we doen, is kijken hoe bepaalde oncogenen functioneren in een GIS-modelsysteem. En het GIS-modelsysteem is mooi omdat we in een heel korte tijd een oncogen genetisch kunnen manipuleren of met DNA kunnen knutselen, dat in gist brengen en het effect in gist bestuderen. Voor de studenten is het natuurlijk onderzoekend leren en voor mij is het onderzoekend doseren. Het is consequent inspelen of continu inspelen op wat er gaat gebeuren. En je weet het niet. Dat maakt het ook voor een docent veel spannender.
Het is proberen, want onderzoek is proberen. En dat betekent dus dat we van tevoren niet goed weten wat de einduitkomsten zullen zijn van de proeven die we uiteindelijk willen doen.
Als je geen groei hoe dat kan, dat weet ik.
We proberen ervoor te zorgen dat er een aantal zekerheden ingebouwd zijn. Zodat we niet met lege handen komen te staan halverwege het project. Maar wat er uiteindelijk uit de proeven die we gaan doen uit gaan komen, daar hebben we geen idee van.
Een voorbeeld van het onderzoekend doseren is dat de studenten iets in elkaar geknutseld hebben, met een resultaat komen. Dan komen ze bij een docent en zeggen, wat hebben we nu gedaan? Want ik begrijp er helemaal niets van. En als de docent zegt, van ik weet het ook niet. Want ik zie het ook voor de eerste keer. En dan denken de studenten van, nou die is gek, want dat is eigenlijk de deskundige.
In principe begin je als docent, maar je merkt dat je langzamerhand steeds meer gewoon een teamlid wordt. En dat je eigenlijk gewoon samen met de studenten bezig bent in groepjes om als team een onderzoeksvraag te beantwoorden.
Eventjes weer te recapituleren wat we nou ook weer aan het doen waren en waar we naartoe en wat we nou in GIS gaan zetten.
Om ervoor te zorgen dat studenten inderdaad bij het start van elke nieuwe dag weer precies weten waar we mee bezig zijn, wat we gaan doen de komende dag, houden we een kleine bijeenkomst bij een bord met een krijtje, gewoon heel simpel. In het begin doen wij als docenten dat. En het idee is dat aan het einde de studenten dat wat meer overnemen. Die krijgen daar een wat grotere rol in. Zodat de studenten eigenlijk vertellen wat hebben we gedaan en wat gaan we doen. En op die manier proberen we er een beetje voor te zorgen dat inderdaad elke student uit de groep op een gegeven moment aan het begin van de dag weer helemaal bij is. En weet wat er moet gaan gebeuren die dag.
In de GIS-cel. En daartoe hebben we een plasmide geknipt.
Het is leuk als je practicum doet dat je nog niet weet wat eruit komt. Bij elke tussenstap die je hebt en bij elk resultaat dat je krijgt moet je echt nadenken van goh, klopt het wat ik heb?
Soms gaan er dingen anders dan je verwacht dat ze gaan en dan moet je zelf bedenken hoe je het dan op kunt gaan lossen en dan toch net op een andere manier weer doen. Dus dat is ook erg leuk.
Onderzoek moet je fantasie voor hebben. En fantasie is gekoppeld aan kennis. En kennis is natuurlijk iets wat tijdens de studie langzaam aan het groeien is. Dus je komt van twee kanten. Je moet de fantasie hebben en je moet de kennis hebben. En dat proberen we te combineren in het project. En het project is geslaagd als we in principe de onderzoeksvraagstelling voor een groot deel kunnen beantwoorden. En daarnaast hebben we natuurlijk een aantal toetsingsmomenten. En als ik de tentamenvraag en de samenvatting lees en ik zie dat ze daar een aantal dingen goed hebben opgepikt, dan ben je als docent tevreden. Dan zeg je van oké, ze hebben ook echt iets geleerd.
Okay, so the interesting thing here is that, as you can see, the teachers have a view on what their role is as a teacher in this kind of, inquiry-based education. It's what they call not only learning by inquiry, but also teaching by inquiry, and that makes, I think, their analysis very interesting. Okay, so here we have a quick view on the way in which, in the context of the community of learners, inquiry-based education is organized. First, you start with benchmark lessons, which make the problem students are going to explore vivid, and which highlights, let's say, the relevance of the problem and the need for an answer for the particular problem. So you invite experts, you go to a site perhaps where the problem can be demonstrated, and you ask people who are involved to explain what the problem is. So this, let's say, raises the interest of the students. Then there's the first brainstorm, in order to explore how the problem could be tackled, let's say. Then students make a visit to the lab where measurements have to take place or analysis are going to take place, etc. Then students are trained in using the equipment, and then there is a second brainstorm meeting in which groups are composed. Research questions are identified and formulated so that the separate groups can, let's say, do their own study, and also there is attention for bringing together all the results in a joint end result. Then the phase of the data collection takes place. Then there is the data analysis, and then the outcomes are researched by the individual groups. There is a reflection on the quality of the data and the outcomes, and there's an evaluation. Okay, this model it has been developed by Anne Brown, in which you see that reflection is important in the whole process of doing research, and also at the end, as I explained, in sharing the information and also in preparing a consequential task. And deep disciplinary content, of course, is needed in order to carry out the research project. Okay. Focus on big ideas. That's the third characteristic of a community of learners. the essential idea here is that a research project which is carried out by students in a community of learners is not an ordinary sort of project which perhaps has been programmed in order to give some entertainment to the students, but it does really help them to understand the content of the course and of the curriculum in which the course is a part. And the content can be perhaps summarized in a few main ideas. And it is important that the students get contact with these main ideas, with these big ideas, which are the core of the curriculum. This example here is an example, I won't go into many details here, of the chemistry curriculum in higher secondary education, where the molecule is the center, D, and where all other topics are arranged around this center. And this is a typical example of what is called the concept-context approach, in which the big idea, the concept, is the central of the curriculum. Okay. Of course, as you already understand, students get acquainted with the culture of doing research and the culture of collaboration and communicating research outcomes. So what you can see here is basically that a community of learners has not only the intention to help the students to understand a subject matter area by doing research, but it has also the intention, the objective of helping students to participate in the professional environment of the future career. Perhaps you could call it sort of, a beginning participation or peripheral participation. But the central idea is that students, while they work in the research project in the labs, as we saw in the example, they are already, taken seriously as researchers, and they start to behave like a researcher. And that is also part of the focus of the goals, of the objectives of a community of learners. So, in fact, understanding and participation are two main objectives of a community of learners. Reflection skills are developed and are necessary to connect, the research outcomes in the particular experiments students have been conducting to the main ideas, the big ideas, which are the core of the curriculum. And therefore you need, to bridge the various levels of expertise, of abstraction. You need reflection skills. Reflection on research outcomes, reflection on research methods, and on also the value of research. And finally, students have the disposition of all kinds of resources and equipment they need to conduct their research. Information tools, communication tools, and research and collaboration tools. And these are all important tools for students also to enable them to act as serious researchers. Okay, in this way we have a small, this example I will leave now. We have a small, let's say, exploration of the learning perspective of constructivism, in which, as you have seen, perhaps a student takes an active role in the process of constructing knowledge, in this case by doing research, together with other students, as you have seen in the example, and of course building upon the learner's own experience and own knowledge. And in this way, I think we have a very rich perspective on learning.